Hi everyone, I'm Charlie. I'm a 21-year-old iwill ambassador. I'm a disability and asexuality activist, dyspraxic, autistic, ADHD and chronically ill. I work in lived experience for the NHS and small charities, as well as being a writer and speaker. And today I'm talking about building a movement in relation to disability and access. The disability movement's where I found my home, is where I feel like my most liberated. It's given me a purpose, but much of the world outside of it is not ready to support us and take down our barriers. When we look at building movements today, let's talk about how you can be a part of it, going from awareness to access. The US is considered by many as the birthplace of the disability rights movement, centering the introduction of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, in 1990. A broad coalition of campaigners came together to push this, and activists had a part in every element, from protesting to helping write it. The ADA was built on two principles: that disabled people deserve the same civil rights protections as others, and that society benefits from the independence of disabled people who can work and pay taxes. Arguably, that second reason shouldn't be necessary, but it makes sense in the context of persuading a Republican president to back it. Famously, disabled people got out of their wheelchairs and climbed the Capitol steps to show why the ADA was needed due to the lack of a ramp. This included Jennifer Keelan Chaffins, an 8-year-old with cerebral palsy, who you can see at the front of this photo on the left. Activists also chained their wheelchairs together in the Capitol Rotunda. The ADA was one of the first pieces of legislation that began to use the social model of disability. This model says that as disabled people, our struggles are due to the barriers and inaccessibility that we face, rather than because of our conditions themselves. It advocates for tearing down these barriers, and this is what many of us now strive for. In the UK, there has also been plenty of history involving the disability rights movement, with the DDA, Disability Discrimination Act, in 1995. In 1992, disabled activists went en masse into the headquarters of Telethon 92, a 28-hour fundraiser by ITV portraying a damaging version of disability as tragic stereotypes. Disability activism is often done online due to the inaccessibility of physical environments. Researchers looking at activism may refer to the rise of slacktivism, actions performed via the internet requiring little time or involvement. But this is a phenomenon we have to separate from a community that relies on the internet often. Social media is used to mobilize, form community, and instead of slacktivism, other researchers have called it from-bed activism or an armchair army. This is particularly true since the onset of austerity. Through blogs and sites like Twitter, in 2010, there were sustained attacks on welfare cuts, which did trend on Twitter. The disability rights movement is built on a foundation of politicized identity and the belief of people outside of it that we're too vulnerable to fight. Groups like Disabled People Against Cuts, or DPAC, in the grassroots have shown the impact they can have in sustained campaigns for progress. As a movement, we are still fighting similar battles to those we were at the beginning. Even though laws are in place, we still see places without even ramps, let alone access like sensory rooms, quiet spaces, level boarding on trains, and the eradication of ableism in healthcare and education settings, just as examples. The coronavirus pandemic has shown up many of these gaps. The UK government constantly did not provide a BSL interpreter for briefings, meaning deaf people could not access vital health information. They were taken to court in a judicial review, and ultimately campaigners from the Where is the Interpreter campaign actually did win against the government on this. And the pandemic has also shown the ways that support could have been in place, but institutions didn't want to until the non-disabled majority needed them, like remote working or the recording of university lectures. And this is once again being pulled away from many of us as restrictions have been lifted. You can help disabled people through small actions, particularly through making your social media accessible. This includes captioning your videos and providing alt text and image descriptions when you post photos, meaning blind and visually impaired people can understand what the picture is. And share content by disabled people about our experiences. Awareness days and months come and go, but we are disabled every day of the year and experience ableism every day of the year too. Make sure you're following a diverse range of us with intersectional identities. Being LGBTQ+, a marginalized gender, or Black, for example, can also impact our experiences. And a lot of learning about this comes down to listening and asking. There is so much that is broken within society, from the benefits system to medical misogyny to reasonable adjustments not being in place. Many people respond to us with, but that's against the law, but it all still happens anyway. If you're interviewing people, stop putting emphasis on eye contact and handshakes. You're inadvertently discriminating against autistic people, with only 22 of us in paid work. Allow for remote working that means chronically ill and housebound people can work. Run events with a quiet room, an interpreter, a ramp as standard. And stop viewing disabled people as only ever a tragedy or a Paralympian. Society tends to hide disabled people until they're inspirational and then not support us until we break. And disabled people overcoming the barriers that society put in place isn't inspirational because they shouldn't have been there in the first place. The fundamental aim of the disability rights movement is to get to a place of an accessible, equal society. We are the largest minority group in the world and one of the only ones that you can become at any time. We deserve to be believed, supported, and our barriers destroyed. In building a movement, the disability rights movement is constantly living up to the phrase it began, nothing about us without us. And we will gain a seat at every table, and one day the barriers we face may be broken down and society ready for us to thrive.